Hello and welcome. This is Mr. Cologne. Hi, guys. In a gender inclusive sense, I want to go over Church History Unit 4, Lesson 4 PowerPoints on the Great Schism between East and West, and also Unit 5, Lesson 1 on the Crusades. All of these are a general overview of church history, and by its very nature, church history is very much tied into the history of Western civilization. And as a generalized view, it does, I guess, skip over some nuances that happened throughout the centuries. But I think the main point of this course would be to show God's hand in history, that he still is interacting with history, though not the same way as he did before the close of the canon or public revelation by the death of the last apostle, but he's still ongoing, working through his people and those who do God's will, if you remember Romans 8:28. All right. I guess before we start, remind you guys to keep up with your quotes and words of the day. We are in 2.8 and 2.9 in terms of the quotes of the day that are due. So you could be current on those. And when we are back at the end of April, either physically or via digital means, we will grade that. All right, so on to this PowerPoint. I guess from the 700s to the 1050s AD, and that is the history of the church, talking about the Great Schism. I asked you to define the word schism and the word filioque, actually. Schism being that this is all off the top of my head. These are not the book definitions, which I encourage you to look forward, as they will be the one closest to any future quiz or tests in the future. But schism, it's the breaking apart or fracturing, as it were, from the east and west, typically dated from the 1050s when the double excommunications came forth from Michael the First and also from Humberto, which we'll talk about, Hubert, I should say. And B, we had the filioque. The notion of filios means the son, and how the son proceeds from the father, and the son, that is the spirit. And was it just the father the spirit proceeds from, or the father and the son? So that is a controversy, one of them finding theological controversies of the schism. But as we'll come to find out in this PowerPoint, and also your book reading and the video that hopefully you watched and you did the assignment on, that it really has to do with papal authority. How much does the Roman pontiff authority does he have? Is he the first among equals? Does he have his sole authority, which is a quote of the day there? Is he the first among equals? And what does that mean? Does that mean that he has he leads a group of patriarchs or bishops, which we would say he does, but does he have sole authority? Can he make a decision that they may disagree with, but as the successor of St. Peter, does he have the final say, and does he need the other ones to back him up, or a council? So, all right, so moving on, and on the right, we also have, I like having infographics, things that really help us to understand what happens in between the Eastern and the Western Church. All right, moving on, we have Pepin the Short. He was the king of the Franks, and he is famous for having a winning over some territory for the Pope in the donation of Pepin in AD 756. And at this time, the Pope not only was the vicar of Christ, was head or shepherd over the souls of people, but also the temporal component as well. So, and this had both advantages and disadvantages. There's always a notion that the church itself, the human element of the church, could be corrupted by the secular world and be into this palace intrigue. So, and we have here on the right, vicar of Christ or royal steward. That is one who is instead of the king. When the king is away, the vicar and the steward take the place of the king, and that is what Saint Peter and his successors are said to do. So we have Pepin, and Pepin's other major contribution is that his son, that is Charles or Charlemagne, would come and he would set the catalyst up for, I guess, the schism to keep, um, really to start with the fracturing process, as it were. So we have Charlemagne the Great. He was a charismatic, well educated, and a military leader. He helped continue the European culture and really inculcate this, and was really a one who would promote the church in various activities and really continued Christendom, as it were. The big event would be that the Pope Leo III, in AD 800, crowned Charlemagne with the new imperial title of Emperor of the Romans, the Holy Roman Emperor, or as some you can call it, the First Reich, without all the negative connotations of that, but that's what it was, the First Reich. And this empire technically lasted till 1806, but really it had its heyday during the first few centuries when Charlemagne and his immediate successors were in charge. The Byzantine emperors considered themselves to be the rightful rulers of the Western world, that is, the Eastern Byzantine emperors, and they were kind of infuriated by the Pope's actions by crowning Charlemagne. So here we have another Eastern and Western sort of difference there, that the Eastern believed to be the inheritors of Christendom, especially since the West fell previously, and the eastern half of the Roman Empire remained. And again, this eastern half would came to become known as the Byzantine Empire, though they would consider themselves as still around and still part of the Roman Empire. So, and like the last bullet point there says, the cracks of the Great Schism really started, and when Constantine made his Constantinople, established that, and really continued with 9th century over the iconoclasm controversy, and Charlemagne was another thing that was adding to the fire of this upcoming tension. The Great Schism between the East and West was formalized in AD 1054. That's when historians put a date on it, if we have to do that. And this is between Orthodox Christianity, that is the Eastern Christianity, and Western Christianity. Orthodox and the little o word, that is correct belief. And we have here a quote from John just to let us know that Christ wanted his followers to be one. So this schism was really against God's will or Christ's will. So, and I have here two reasons why the schism happened, probably very important to know for future assessments. And that is that what between the primacy of the Pope versus the Eastern patriarchal model, that is the patriarch model versus the more Western Pope-centric model of church governance. That is one reason. And the other reason would be the Filioque controversy. From whom does the Holy Spirit proceed from? And we have here that it's, well, it does have some theological controversies. It's because the West decided to change a creed without the Eastern permission, or at least letting the Eastern half of the empire church know. And this caused great consternations. Doesn't mean that theology was technically wrong. It was because the fact that they changed it without any input from the East that caused a lot of quote unquote butt hurt, according to this controversy. If I could generalize, and try to be charitable to the Eastern side. Um, Basically, Humbert and Michael first, they were really the ones who solidified this schism by double excommunicating each other, and by the East and the West having accusations against one another. This really is what set this double excommunication is really what cemented and what really made historians date the breaking up of the East and West in the 1050s. So in 1054. So an important date, and due to I guess bad um, not able to be getting along and not able to resolve the filioque controversy, and also the fact of the patriarchal model versus of the East versus the Latin model of the Pope being the head. So now I'm going to move to the Crusades. Crusades, I have here two definitions, words of the day. We have what is a Christian crusade? That is a military action or pilgrimage against unwarranted or what we would say unjust Muslim aggression, and the notion of feudalism, the system of governance that was around, or it's more of an economic system of how citizenship and how work life would work. And then we have the famous quote, controversial quote, now that is a Deus Vult, that is God's wills it, a Crusader refrain, and Unit 5, Lesson 1, let us keep going with it. And the end of Charlemagne's reign, unfortunately, led to many bad things going on in the church. And the papacy was warred over church leaders, Roman nobles, and emperors. And people tried to correct this, but this is a dark time in the church. And here we have some graphs just to let you know what caused the difference, making the empire weaker, as it were. So I would probably get to know the top half, the causes and effects there. And here we have something you can read from your book. That's why I always ask that you read. I have here pages 144 through 161 through 164 to understand what the Crusades are and what they were fighting for, the Holy Land. So I'm not going to go over this. You can either read it straight from here or go through your book and read the difference. Pope Urban II and what he called for. So Pope Urban II is the one who called on the Crusades to help the Eastern Christians out from their Muslim invasion. And we have that they wanted the Holy Land, specifically Jerusalem, to be freed at this point. These are very easy to follow question and answer questions. And what were the primary motivations of the Crusaders? At least remember there were different crusades. At least these first crusades were arguably warranted and to stop unjust Muslim aggression, and not only aggression, but to taking over Christian lands and trying to also have these lands back on the Christian side of things. We have that there's many different wars and difficulties in the siege of Jerusalem that happened in 1099, and the Crusades, they were going to take all of them into practice and have an overview of them. It was that it was not as successful as Christians would want us, or if we would have those lands at this point. And lands do have an important part of the faith, but they are not the faith itself. So we got to keep that in mind. And we have here about the fact that the other crusades were not as successful. And going over this really quick about Saladin, the Muslim conqueror and one of the popular leaders of the opposition, and to know who he was and the different outcomes of the crusades. So I would invite you guys to go ahead and take a look at these and to familiarize yourselves with both the myths of the crusades and the crusades in general, and like not solely focus on the red, but I would be asking about other different questions in terms of quizzes or assessments. So take care, God bless, and be safe.